Morgan. I'm 32, an interior designer based in Charleston, South Carolina. And let's just say my roots are a tangled mess of Southern family politics, broken promises, and a whole lot of fake smiles. You know how they say blood is thicker than water? Well, sometimes water is the only thing keeping you sane, especially when your family treats you like you don't exist. Imagine being left out of a family reunion, only to find out they held it at your house, my house. The very house I poured my heart, soul, and every last penny into. It's the kind of ironic twist that even a seasoned screenwriter might dismiss as too unbelievable, yet here we are. This isn't some made-up tale for clicks. It's my life, unvarnished and raw. My story isn't just about the painful sting of being excluded, of being deemed unworthy of an invitation to an event celebrating the very concept of family. It's deeper than that. It's about the quiet, relentless ache of feeling like an outsider in your own kin, constantly striving for a connection that never quite materializes. For years, I chased their fleeting acceptance, their rarely offered smiles, desperate for a slice of the belonging pie that seemed so readily available to everyone else. Every holiday, every purported family gathering, I'd hold my breath, hoping for a call, an email, even a text, only to be met with the deafening silence that became the soundtrack to my extended family life. They ghosted me, effectively, long before the term became a popular dating phenomenon. They simply erased me from their narrative, a minor character written out without so much as a goodbye. But don't worry. This story isn't just about exclusion. It's about something far more potent. It's about the quiet, unyielding power of success earned through grit and sacrifice. It's about the profound sting of betrayal, yes, but also about the satisfaction that comes when you realize your worth, independent of anyone's validation. And most importantly, it's about the kind of revenge that doesn't need screaming, doesn't demand confrontation, and certainly doesn't require a public spectacle. It's the kind of revenge that speaks volumes in its quiet elegance, articulated not by raised voices, but by a simple deed to a beach house. Have you ever been ghosted by your own family? Have you poured your energy into people who treat you like an afterthought? Have you ever had to build your own chosen family because the one you were born into just couldn't see you? Comment below, share your experiences, because I know I'm not alone in this. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you love a good revenge tale, especially one where the protagonist doesn't have to lift a finger to make her point. Trust me, this one's worth it. Growing up, our house was less a home and more a stage for a very particular kind of Southern family drama. Every character had their role perfectly cast, and mine, it seemed, was the perennial outsider. At the center of this domestic tableau was my older sister, Amanda. She was, to put it mildly, the golden daughter. From her perfectly styled blonde hair to her impeccable grades, Amanda was everything my parents, Deborah and Robert Morgan, ever dreamed of. She excelled at ballet, charming every teacher and family friend with her effortless grace and compliant nature. Her report cards were always pristine, adorned with glowing remarks about her diligence and keen intellect. She was destined for a prestigious university, a respectable profession, and a perfectly curated life. My mother, Deborah, a woman who valued image and social standing above all else, ensured Amanda was always in the spotlight, polished and presented for maximum approval. Her conversations often revolved around Amanda's latest achievement, her voice laced with an almost performative pride. Then there was me, Lily, the black sheep. From a young age, I felt like a discordant note in their carefully composed symphony. While Amanda effortlessly floated through life, I stumbled, questioned, and colored outside the lines. My interests were deemed eccentric, my opinions challenging, and my creativity, well, that was just a wild goose chase. I preferred sketching in a quiet corner to dance recitals, and my idea of a perfect afternoon involved rearranging my bedroom furniture rather than memorizing historical dates. My father, Robert, a stern and controlling patriarch, viewed my artistic inclinations with barely veiled disdain. He was a man of logic, of traditional professions, lawyers, doctors, engineers. Anything else was a hobby, a frivolous diversion from the serious business of life. What's an interior designer, Lily? He'd often scoff, his tone dripping with dismissal. That's not a real career. How will you ever amount to anything? Dinners were often uncomfortable affairs. Conversations would circle back to Amanda's successes, her upcoming exams, her future plans, and then a critical gaze would turn to me. My mother would chime in with passive-aggressive remarks about my lack of focus or unconventional choices, carefully delivered with a saccharine smile that made the words cut even deeper. I remember bringing home a drawing I was immensely proud of in third grade, a vibrant landscape bursting with color. I showed it to my mother, expecting some flicker of warmth, but she just patted my head absently and said, "That's nice, dear. But have you finished your math homework?" The message was clear. My passions were secondary, insignificant. The ridicule wasn't always direct. Sometimes it was a quiet sigh from my father when I mentioned my desire to study art. Other times it was Amanda's playful jabs, which always carried a sharp edge. "Oh, Lily's just in her own little world," she'd say to relatives, a light laugh masking the familiar undermining. There was this constant pressure to conform, to fit into a mold that simply wasn't me. They saw my uniqueness not as strength, but as a flaw, a deviation from the perfect family portrait they meticulously maintained for public consumption. By the time I turned 18, the suffocating atmosphere became unbearable. I felt like an alien in my own home, my spirit dwindling with each dismissive glance and barbed comment. The decision to leave was less a choice and more a primal urge for survival. I needed to breathe, to find a space where my choices weren't ridiculed, where my dreams weren't dismissed as childish whims. I packed a small bag, a handful of savings, and a fierce determination to prove them all wrong. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew with every fiber of my being that my path lay far away from the carefully constructed world of the Morgan family. I left to forge my own way, finally free from their expectations and ready to become the person they never allowed me to be. Leaving home at 18 wasn't an escape. It was a dive into the unknown. I arrived in Charleston with little more than a backpack, a few $100s, and a burning desire to prove everyone wrong. The early years were brutal. I landed in design school, fueled by a passion for creating spaces, but the reality of supporting myself hit hard. My first apartment was a series of friends' sofas, exchanging design tips for a place to crash. Ramen noodles were a luxury, and sleep was a commodity I rarely indulged in. Rejection became a familiar companion. Design firms weren't interested in a fresh graduate with no portfolio and no connections. I faced countless closed doors, each one a sharp echo of my father's dismissive words. But every single no hardened my resolve. I wasn't going to let their expectations, or lack thereof, define my future. If no one would give me a chance, I'd make my own. I took on 3 jobs to make ends meet, waiting tables in the morning, working retail in the afternoon, and sketching designs late into the night. My hands were always busy, my mind always churning. I was exhausted, but for the first time, I felt truly alive, driven by something internal rather than external validation. This was my fight, and I was going to win it. My first real break came unexpectedly. A small, dilapidated bungalow in an up-and-coming neighborhood went up for sale, practically falling apart. The owner just wanted it gone. I saw potential where others saw ruin. With every spare dollar I earned, I bought materials. Every free moment was spent tearing down, building up, painting, sanding, and transforming. I taught myself plumbing from online videos and carpentry from library books. It was grueling, solitary work, but with each nail I hammered, each coat of paint I applied, I was building not just a house, but also my confidence. When I finally sold that first renovated home, the profit, though modest, felt like a king's ransom. It wasn't just money, it was proof. Proof that I could do this, that my eye for design and my willingness to work hard had real value. That little bungalow sparked something in me, a fascination with real estate, with the tangible act of transforming spaces and creating value. I started looking for more opportunities, small, undervalued properties that I could inject life into. Each successful flip gave me more capital, more experience, and most importantly, more belief in myself. Then came Sandra Liu. She was a wealthy client who initially hired me for a small remodel, but our collaboration soon turned into something more profound. Sandra was sharp, elegant, and incredibly astute. She saw something in me beyond just my design skills. She saw my hustle, my tenacity, my resilience. She became my mentor, offering not just business advice, but also emotional support, helping me navigate the cutthroat world of high-end real estate and design. She taught me about investing, about leverage, about thinking big. More than that, she affirmed my worth, something my family had never done. Lily, she once told me, your greatest strength isn't just your talent, it's your ability to rise above. Don't ever let anyone dull your shine. Her guidance and my growing profits allowed me to make my biggest investment yet, a neglected, sprawling beachfront property in Wilmington, North Carolina. It was a diamond in the rough, severely outdated and structurally challenging, but the ocean view was unparalleled. I poured everything I had into it, not just money, but literally months of my own hands-on labor, overseeing every single detail. I designed every room, chose every finish, even laid some of the tiles myself. It wasn't just a project. It was an act of self-creation. I transformed that house, room by room, into my personal sanctuary, a tangible manifestation of all the lessons I had learned, all the struggles I had overcome. It was a place I could finally call my own, free from judgment, filled with beauty, and imbued with the quiet pride of my own making. This wasn't just a house. It was my bold statement to the world, built from the broken pieces of my past after pouring my heart and soul into building my career and securing my financial independence. A part of me, a small, persistent voice, still yearned for a connection with my family. Despite everything, they were my blood, and the hope of reconciliation lingered like a distant, fading melody. So, over the years, I tried. I really did. I'd send holiday cards with updates on my life, carefully omitting the struggles and focusing on the triumphs, hoping a glimpse of my success might bridge the gap. I'd call on birthdays, offering genuine well wishes, trying to keep the conversation light and neutral, avoiding any topics that might trigger old tensions. Sometimes, I'd even suggest meeting up, proposing a neutral location, a casual lunch, just to catch up. But each overture was met with the same lukewarm response, if any response at all. My mother would offer a perfunctory, "That's nice, dear," about my career updates, quickly shifting the conversation to Amanda's latest achievement or some local gossip. My father's phone calls were brief, almost businesslike, devoid of any real personal interest. Any attempts to meet up were met with a litany of excuses. "Oh, we're just so busy this month," or "Amanda has a prior engagement that day," or "it's not really a good time for us." It became a pattern I knew all too well. Holidays, especially, were a painful reminder of my exclusion. Christmas, Thanksgiving, even smaller family gatherings like Easter or a summer barbecue, I was never invited. I'd see their Facebook posts, perfect smiling faces gathered around a festive table, and feel a sharp pang of loneliness mixed with a growing resentment. They'd post pictures of elaborate family dinners, entire clans gathered, and I'd be conspicuously absent. My mother would often send me a text message on Christmas morning, a generic Merry Christmas that felt more like an obligation than genuine affection. My father would either call quickly or mostly not respond at all. There was one particularly memorable Thanksgiving. I called my mother, hoping to extend an olive branch to perhaps hint at an invitation. She answered, her voice bustling with activity. "Oh, Lily, darling, what a surprise. We're just about to sit down for dinner. The whole family's here." The casualness of her statement, the complete lack of invitation, hit me harder than any outright rejection. It was as if I didn't even exist in their consideration. They didn't exclude me. They simply didn't include me, which felt almost worse. It was the ultimate definition of being ghosted by your own family, a silent, insidious erasure. After years of these one-sided efforts, of constantly extending myself only to be met with disinterest or thinly veiled excuses, something in me finally snapped. The emotional labor of trying to maintain a relationship with people who clearly didn't value it became too heavy a burden. I stopped reaching out. I stopped sending cards. I stopped calling on birthdays. The radio silence, once a painful symbol of their neglect, became my quiet act of self-preservation. I built a life full of chosen family, friends, colleagues, mentors who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges. I found my tribe, people who saw me, truly saw me, for who I was. Life was good. My business was thriving, my friends were amazing, and my beautiful beach house in Wilmington was both my sanctuary and a testament to my hard work. I truly believed I had found peace with the estrangement, that I had successfully closed that chapter of my life. Then came the Instagram post. It was late summer, a beautiful evening. I was scrolling through my feed, unwinding after a long day of client consultations. And there it was. Amanda, radiant, surrounded by my parents and other extended family members, all smiling, laughing, raising glasses. The caption read, "Morgan Family Bonfire Reunion. So good to have everyone together at this incredible beach house." What a view! My heart started to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs, because behind them, unmistakable, was the distinctive fire pit I had custom built into the natural rock outcropping on my own private beach, the unique reclaimed cypress beams of the outdoor kitchen, and the precise, breathtaking sunset view that only my property offered. My world, which I thought had settled into a comfortable peace, suddenly shifted on its axis. The exclusion, the holiday lies, the years of radio silence, it all condensed into one searing realization. They hadn't just forgotten me. They were actively enjoying my home, celebrating my success, all while pretending I didn't exist. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a profound violation. And in that moment, I knew. Things were about to change. The moment I pinpointed my beach house in Amanda's Instagram post, a cold clarity washed over me. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a brazen, undeniable intrusion. My sanctuary, the physical embodiment of my hard-won independence, had been rented out to the very people who had systematically excluded me from their lives. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. You see, when I purchased the property, I did so under the name of my new real estate and design LLC. This wasn't some elaborate scheme to fool my family. It was standard business practice for privacy, liability, and tax purposes. Most of my major assets, including the beach house, were legally tied to the LLC. And when I decided to occasionally rent out the house via a high-end vacation rental platform to help offset the running costs, the listings were naturally under the LLC's management, not my personal name. My family, being who they are, likely never bothered to look past the agency's name. They just saw a luxurious beach rental and booked it, completely oblivious to the true owner. They assumed it was just some agency, probably a faceless corporation, perfectly anonymous. The more I thought about it, the deeper the wound went. They hadn't just used my house, they had violated my safe space. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was a symbol of my freedom, my resilience, my quiet victory. I had poured my heart and soul into every detail of the renovation, making it a reflection of my inner self. And now they were cavalierly occupying it, living in my meticulously curated space, entirely unaware of whose rules they were implicitly breaking. I pulled up the rental platform's owner access portal. With a few clicks, I could see the active booking details, the names, the dates. My parents' names stared back at me, Robert and Deborah Morgan. And indeed, cross-referenced with Amanda's photos, it was them. They were truly there, living in my space, breathing my air, walking on my floors. The violation hit me hard. I started pulling up the security camera feeds, the ones discreetly placed for property monitoring and guest safety. What I saw made my blood run cold. My family, comfortable and oblivious, moving through rooms I had designed with such care. I watched my mother, Deborah, casually tossing a pile of my personal guest towels, the plush, custom-embroidered ones, onto a deck chair, leaving them wrinkled and uncared for in the sun. My carefully arranged throws were bunched up, my unique art pieces were askew. They treated it not as a rented property to be respected, but as a generic vacation lodge, devoid of any personal connection, because to them it was generic, Then, the ultimate insult. I saw a glimpse of what used to be a small, serene sunroom, which I typically used as an art studio or a quiet reading nook. On the feed, it was crammed with their luggage, beach gear, and discarded clothing. My childhood room, the very small bedroom in my parents' house that had been relegated to storage after I left at 18. That small, forgotten space, a symbol of my erasure from their lives, was now mirrored in the disrespect shown to my creative space in my own home. They had turned my sanctuary into their forgotten storage unit, a dumping ground for their excess, just as they had relegated me to the forgotten corner of their family story. And through it all, the chilling realization, none of them, not my mother nor my stern father nor my perfect sister, even realized it was mine. Not a single inkling. They saw the perfection, the luxury, the breathtaking views, and never once connected it to the black sheep daughter they dismissed so readily. They were enjoying the fruits of my labor, the result of my resilience, and they didn't have the slightest idea. It was the ultimate, unwitting insult, and it ignited a fire within me that had been long dormant. The quiet rise I had achieved was about to make a very loud entrance at Teichi's side of my family. Oblivious and disrespecting my sanctuary ignited a cold, calculated fury within me. My first instinct, the raw, emotional part of me, screamed to drive straight to Wilmington, burst through the front door, and demand to know what they thought they were doing. But years of building my empire, navigating complex business deals, and learning to play the long game had taught me patience. Revenge, I decided, was a dish best served not just cold, but meticulously planned. I didn't confront them immediately. Why would I? Their ignorance was a crucial ingredient in the bitter meal I was preparing. Instead, I settled in a quiet observer. The security camera feeds, which I had previously used only for practical purposes, suddenly became my window into their world. I spent hours watching them, a strange mixture of fascination and disgust churning in my stomach. What I saw confirmed every negative assumption I had ever harbored about them. They were slopping drinks on my antique rugs, leaving sandy footprints across my polished hardwood floors, and generally treating the meticulous space I had created with a shocking lack of care. My mother, Deborah, was constantly fretting about appearance, arranging the rented decor for photos, but entirely overlooking the actual state of the house. My father, Robert, barked orders and pontificated, completely at ease in my space, never pausing to consider the effort that went into it. And Amanda. Oh, Amanda. She was particularly galling. I watched her lounging by the pool, phone in hand, gossiping with a cousin about my absence. Honestly, I don't know why we even bother with Lily, she drawled, her voice carrying distinctly through the outdoor mics. She's always been so. Flighty. And her taste. Did you see that art piece she made for Aunt Carol's birthday? Just dreadful. A wave of heat flushed through me. My art, the very expression of my being, mocked in my own home. Later, I saw her casually leaning against a custom-built bookshelf, pointing at one of my carefully curated art books. Honestly, this house is beautiful, she said to someone, but some of the art choices are just so questionable. I guess you can't buy taste. Each comment, each careless action was another drop in the bucket of my resolve. I meticulously documented everything, taking screenshots of the feeds, noting down instances of damage. My internal plan began to solidify. This wasn't just about showing them I own the house. It was about exposing their true selves, their entitled ignorance, and their consistent dismissal of me. The checkout date for their rental was set for Saturday morning. I called Bryce, my property manager. He was a down-to-earth, reliable professional who knew nothing of my family drama but was always efficient. Bryce, I said, keeping my voice steady, I need to make a change to the upcoming checkout. I'll need you there personally this Saturday, earlier than usual. And I'll be checking in immediately after the current guests depart. He sounded surprised, but I assured him it was a necessary logistical adjustment. He agreed to be there. I knew he was discreet, and he would simply ensure protocol was followed. Then, under my LLC's owner name, the one they had unknowingly rented from, I booked myself as the next guest for Saturday afternoon. It was the final, critical step in my plan. I wanted to arrive as the current guests were still in the process of leaving, a direct, undeniable transition of ownership. The element of surprise was key. They would wake up on Saturday morning, blissfully unaware that their idyllic reunion was about to become the setting for their rude awakening. The calm before the storm was almost over, and I relished every second of the air in Wilmington was crisp and salty on Saturday morning, a stark contrast to the churning storm inside me. I arrived at the beach house just as the first glimmer of the rising sun kissed the ocean, a deliberate timing. Bryce, my property manager, was already there, efficient and professional as always. He gave me a brief, understanding nod, seemingly sensing the gravity of the situation without needing to be told. The tension as almost palatable, even before the show began. I parked my car discreetly down the road and walked towards the house, Bryce just behind me. Through the large panoramic windows, I could see them inside, a flurry of activity, packing up their suitcases and gathering their belongings. They were cutting it close to the checkout time, as most vacationers do. My heart hammered against my ribs, a thrilling drumbeat mixed with a strange sense of anticipation. This was it. The climax of a drama years in the making. We walked up the steps and Bryce knocked on the front door, his knuckles rapping 3 firm times. The chattering within ceased abruptly. After a moment, my father, Robert, opened the door, a slightly annoyed expression on his face. He was clearly flustered, probably rushing to get everything ready. He started to speak a polite, practiced apology for being late to check out, but his words caught in his throat as his eyes landed on me. His face, usually so impassive and controlled, went slack. His jaw dropped almost imperceptibly. Silence descended, thick and absolute. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a void, sucking all the air out of the room. From behind him, my mother, Deborah, emerged into the entryway, fanning herself with a magazine. Her eyes widened, her manicured hand flying to her mouth. She dropped the sun hat she was holding. It floated to the floor like a discarded thought. And then Amanda, my older sister, appeared from the living room, a half-packed duffel bag in her hand. Her smug, confident smile vanished, replaced by a look that was pure, unadulterated shock. Her face literally drained of blood, leaving it a sickly, ashen gray. I stepped forward, elegant and composed, my small overnight bag casually clutched in one hand. I was wearing a simple, tailored linen dress, impeccably accessorized. Every detail was deliberate, every strand of hair in place. I hadn't dressed for a confrontation, but for a graceful arrival into my own domain. My eyes swept over each of their frozen faces, lingering for just a moment on the disbelief etched onto my father's usually stern features. Then I offered a small, polite smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. It was a smile of triumph, veiled in southern charm. I turned slightly to Bryce, who stood patiently beside me, a silent, knowing accomplice. "Thank you for being here, Bryce," I said, my voice clear and melodic, cutting through the heavy silence. "I appreciate you accommodating my earlier check-in." I then looked back at my family, who still stood like statues in their disbelief. My gaze was steady, unwavering. "Well," I began, my voice carrying just enough warmth to qualify as polite, but with an underlying edge of steel. "Hope you enjoyed your stay." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, allowing them to process the unstated implication. Then I delivered the final, devastating blow, my eyes sweeping around the familiar, beloved space. In my home. The words hung in the air, echoing off the walls I had designed, the floors I had chosen, the windows that framed my chosen view. The silence stretched again, pregnant with the weight of revelation. Their reunion, held in my home, was about to become the most awkward exit of their lives. And I was finally ready to claim my space, my simple statement, "Hope you enjoyed your stay." In my home, detonated like a bomb in the quiet entrance of the beach house. Their collective gasp was audible. The shock on their faces was a masterpiece of disbelief, confusion, and dawning horror. My father, Robert, was the first to find his voice, though it was little more than a strangled stammer. "A lily? What? Why are you here? What is this?" His usual composure had completely shattered. He looked like a man who had walked into a familiar room only to find the walls had shifted. My mother, Deborah, ever the image-conscious woman, quickly tried to recover, though her voice still trembled. "Lily, darling, what a surprise. We had no idea you were coming. Is this a visit? How wonderful." She attempted a flimsy, strained smile, but her eyes darted nervously between me and Bryce. The desperation in her tone was palpable, a desperate attempt to normalize an undeniably abnormal situation. She always had to project an air of effortless grace and control. Amanda, however, bypassed the pleasantries entirely. Her face, still ashen, contorted into a snarl. "What is this, Lily? Some kind of joke? A stunt for attention? You can't just barge in here. We rented this place." She tried to gaslight the situation, attempting to twist the narrative, to make me out to be the irrational one, disrupting their peaceful vacation. Her accusation hung in the air, desperate and flimsy. I met her gaze, my expression unwavering. "You certainly did rent it, Amanda," I said, my voice calm and even, a stark contrast to their flustered attempts at coherence. I then turned to my parents, my composure a shield against the years of dismissal. "And as you can see by the presence of Bryce, the property manager, I am the owner of the LLC from which you rented this property." Their eyes widened further. The realization slowly dawned on them, piece by excruciating piece. My father's mouth opened and closed several times before he finally managed. You own this house? This magnificent house? But why didn't you tell us?" The question was steeped in a mix of accusation and bewildered hurt, as if I was the one who had wronged them. My mother rushed closer, reaching for me, her voice laced with what sounded like genuine distress, though I knew better than to fall for her emotional manipulation. "Lily, how could you? All these years. Why would you keep something like this from your own family? We could have stayed here for free. We could have been so proud of you." She truly believed the sin was mine for not sharing my success, not for their years of neglect. I held up a hand, preventing her from touching me. "I didn't tell you," I stated, my voice losing its veneer of politeness, now edged with a sharp, cold iron, "because for years my attempts to connect with you were met with radio silence and dismissive excuses. Because my successes were never celebrated, only compared to Amanda's or deemed not academic enough by father. And because I never imagined you would treat my private sanctuary with such disregard." Then, from the elegant leather folder I held, I smoothly pulled out a neatly printed sheet of paper. "Speaking of which," I continued, handing the document to my father, who took it automatically, his eyes still wide with shock. "This is a detailed list of damages to the property during your stay, compiled from security footage and initial observation. You'll note crayon marks on the upholstered sofa, a significant chip in the kitchen counter, and several broken blinds. Not to mention the careless treatment of my personalized guest towels and the general disarray." My father's eyes scanned the document, his face flushing crimson. My mother gasped, while Amanda's jaw clenched. "Of course," I added, my voice almost a whisper, but resonating clearly in the sudden silence. "I have rental insurance for all of this, and the receipts to prove the cost of repair and replacement. But don't worry." I offered them a small, almost imperceptible smile, full of a bitter satisfaction. "I won't be pressing charges or even claiming on the insurance for these minor infractions. I just wanted the satisfaction of seeing your faces when you realized. This isn't about money. It's about seeing the shattered illusions in your eyes, the moment the reality of who I am and what you missed truly hit you." Their faces were a study in utter humiliation and shock. The golden daughter, the passive mother, the stern father, all of them frozen in a tableau of shattered pride. The carefully constructed facade of their perfect family was crumbling, right there, in the home they never knew belonged to their black sheep daughter. And I had orchestrated every single moment. The silence that followed my revelation in Chapter 7 was absolute, heavy with the weight of shattered pride and the dawning realization of their monumental oversight. My father, still gripping the list of damages, looked utterly deflated, his usual stern demeanor crumbling under the unexpected blow. My mother's face was a roadmap of conflicting emotions, embarrassment, confusion, and a hint of something resembling genuine distress. Amanda, once so confident, now seemed to shrink into herself, her earlier bravado completely evaporated. I let the silence linger, absorbing the moment. This wasn't about shouting or crying. It was about laying down the law, clearly and unequivocally. My voice, when I finally spoke, was calm, devoid of anger, but firm with an authority they had never before witnessed from me. For years, I began, my gaze sweeping across each of T. I tried to be a part of this family. I reached out. I made efforts, and for years, my attempts were dismissed, ignored, or met with excuses. My voice didn't waver. I was excluded from gatherings, from holidays, from the very fabric of family life. My career, my choices, my very self were consistently undervalued and even mocked. My eyes settled on Amanda for a moment, a subtle acknowledgement of her earlier comments echoing in my ears from the security footage. I built my life independently from nothing. This house, I gestured around the elegant living space, is a testament to my hard work, my resilience, and my dedication. It is my sanctuary, my personal space, where I come to relax and recharge. And you, my family, not only failed to include me in your lives, but then inadvertently violated this space, treating it with a disregard that speaks volumes about how little you know or care to know about me. My mother started to speak, a whimper escaping her lips, but I held up a hand, stopping her. No, let me finish. This isn't a conversation. This is me delivering terms. If you wish to be a part of my life going forward, I continued, my voice unwavering, the rules are simple and they are non-negotiable. First, you will respect my agency. My choices, my career, my personal life, they are mine alone, and they are valid. There will be no more dismissive comments, no more thinly veiled criticisms disguised as concern. I looked directly at my father. My success may not fit your traditional definition, but it is real and it is mine. Second, I said, turning to my mother, you will respect my presence. No more fake family events where I am conveniently excluded. If you truly wish for me to be a part of family gatherings, then a genuine invitation, extended with sincere intent, will be the basic expectation. And if I choose to decline, that choice will be respected without guilt-tripping or manipulative tactics. Finally, I looked at all three of them, my voice hardening slightly. Consider this your one and only warning. Any additional disrespect, any attempt to undermine me, or any further disregard for my boundaries, whether personal or proprietary, will result in permanent disconnection. And be very clear, if you ever attempt to abuse my property again, or any other asset I own, you will face swift and severe legal consequences. This house and my life are no longer open for your casual disrespect. I took a breath, letting my words sink in. My terms are clear. Abide by them, and there might be a path forward, built on mutual respect. Disregard them, and you will find yourselves entirely outside my life, permanently. The choice now is yours. I stepped back, allowing them to absorb the weight of my ultimatum. They stood there, silent and stunned, the vibrant, chaotic energy of their reunion now replaced by a chilling stillness. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly in control. The family left awkwardly, their previously self-assured postures deflated, their easy camaraderie replaced by a hushed tension. My father, Robert, tried to regain some semblance of dignity, offering a clipped, "We'll be going then, Lily," before ushering my mother, Deborah, and Amanda out the door. Amanda couldn't meet my eyes. My mother gave me one last, lingering look that was hard to decipher. Was it remorse, anger, or just profound embarrassment? Then they were gone, leaving behind not just their hastily packed bags, but a palpable emptiness in the house. The silence that settled after they drove away was heavy, but it wasn't the suffocating silence of my childhood. This was a silence of completion, of the storm having passed. Bryce, ever the professional, quietly finished his check of the property, a slight, knowing smile playing on his lips as he wished me well and departed. The next few weeks were a strange mix of peace and anticipation. Part of me, the part that had longed for their acceptance for so long, wondered if my ultimatum would pave the way for a genuine shift. Would they reflect on their behavior, on years of neglect, and truly seek to mend fences? Or would they simply resent being called out, retreating further into their defensive shells? About 10 days later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox. The familiar, elegant handwriting on the front was my mother's. Inside was a long letter, several pages written in careful script. It was filled with apologies, but not quite the kind I needed. She wrote about the surprise, the shock, how hurt they had been by my secrecy. There were vague acknowledgments of perhaps not understanding my chosen path and laments about missed family moments. But there was no real acknowledgment of their consistent dismissal, of their active role in my exclusion, or the deeper emotional wounds they had inflicted. It was an apology that still placed the blame, subtly, on me for not sharing my side. It ended with a plea to move past this unfortunate incident and restore family harmony. It felt more like an attempt to smooth over an embarrassing social faux pas than a true reckoning. Amanda went completely silent. No text, no email, no apologetic phone call. Her Instagram, once so active with family photos, became a desert of generic lifestyle shots. It seemed her pride, or perhaps her deep-seated resentment of my very existence, simply wouldn't allow her to acknowledge what had transpired. Her path was clear: pretend nothing had happened. My father, just as predictably, pretended nothing had happened either. He sent a brief, formal email about a week after my mother's letter, ostensibly about a distant relative's health, totally bypassing the Wilmington incident. It was his classic move to address the practical, ignore any uncomfortable emotional landscape. He was incapable of genuine introspection, or perhaps unwilling. I grappled with it all. The immediate satisfaction of their frozen faces had faded, replaced by the complex emotional fallout. Was this redemption, or just regret born of embarrassment? Could I truly let them back into my life, knowing their apologies were conditional, their understanding superficial? Ultimately, I came to a crucial realization. Boundaries don't mean coldness. They mean self-respect. My terms were not about revenge in the petty sense, but about demanding to be seen, acknowledged, and treated with dignity. If they couldn't meet those terms authentically, then forcing a connection would only perpetuate the old, painful dynamic. I decided I wouldn't chase after them anymore. I wouldn't try to explain myself or beg for their understanding. My life, my successes, my happiness, they were my own to dictate, not theirs. I had proven myself not to them, but to myself. And that was more than enough. Days turned into weeks, and the initial shock and tension from the beach house encounter gradually faded, replaced by a profound sense of peace. My family's awkward exit and their subsequent muted responses only solidified what I had come to understand. My worth wasn't, and never would be, dependent on their recognition or approval. The terms I laid out weren't just for them. They were, for me, a declaration of independence and self-respect. After they left, I reclaimed my beach house. I walked through each room, not just as an owner or a guest, but as an inhabitant, a soul returned to its rightful vessel. I aired out the spaces, rearranged the displaced decor, and cleaned away every trace of their unwitting intrusion. The small damages they had caused were easily fixed, almost symbolic in their minor nature compared to the deep, emotional wounds that had driven me to this point. But as I swept up the last bit of sand, straightened a crooked frame, and touched the smooth surface of the counter where they had left a chip, I felt a release, a letting go of years of expectation and longing. The house itself exhaled, purged of the stifling energy they had brought. A few days later, sitting on the expansive deck, the sun dipping below the horizon in a blaze of orange and purple, a glass of crisp white wine in my hand, I felt an unfamiliar sensation, quiet contentment. This wasn't the fleeting satisfaction of revenge, but a deeper, more enduring peace that came from living authentically and honoring my journey. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was no longer just background noise. It was a rhythmic reminder of my resilience, a steady beat accompanying the newfound harmony within me. I decided to host my own reunion, not a grand, formal affair, but an intimate gathering of people who had truly supported me, celebrated me, and loved me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. I invited Sandra Liu, my wise mentor and friend, who had seen my potential when no one else would. I invited colleagues from the design world who respected my talent and hard work. I invited friends who had stood by me through the lean years, offering their sofas and their unwavering belief. These were the people who formed my chosen family, the ones who truly understood the path I had walked. They arrived, filling my beautiful home with genuine laughter, heartfelt conversations, and an atmosphere of warmth and acceptance that had been conspicuously absent during the Morgan family bonfire reunion. We cooked together, shared stories, toasted to success, and watched the sunset from the very fire pit that had sparked this entire saga. This reunion felt real, organic, and truly enriching. There was no pretense, no judgment, only celebration of connection and mutual respect. Looking out at the ocean, bathed in the soft glow of twilight, I realized that the beach house was more than just a property. It was a tangible monument to my journey, a physical representation of every no I turned into a yes, every setback I transformed into a stepping stone. It was a testament to the power of self-reliance, of finding your own way when the traditional path offers no welcome. The lesson wasn't just for my family. It was for me too. I had spent so much of my life seeking validation from the very people who were least equipped to give it. But the process of building this house, building my business, and finally building my boundaries had taught me that the only validation I truly needed was my own. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about inflicting pain. It's about finding peace. It's about building a life so rich in purpose and happiness that the people who doubted you become irrelevant. It's about owning your space, both literally and figuratively. And sometimes, the best revenge is owning the place they never thought you'd live in and walking into it like the queen you are. This beach house will always be mine, a symbol not of what I lacked, but of everything I built.